Welcome to cognitive psychology. Okay, and for this, for the introduction of cognitive psychology. We're going to talk about for the whole semester the parts of the brain. Okay, as you can see on this picture, each part of the brain has different function. Like for this part, this will be for vision. We're going to talk about what is the name of this part. Okay, for this part, this will be where we can find speech, skills for this part, emotion, balance, sensation, and so on and so forth. Okay, still your lecturer, Angela M. de Monteverde, your cognitive psychology instructor. For the session outline, these are the topics that we have to tackle for this whole chapter, for this whole lesson. Okay. Okay, I do have the same reading list. We'll be using that you have also, which is the Robert Sternberg and Karin Sternberg Cognitive Psychology 6th edition. So all the information that will be written here will be palpable, seen on your PDF file or on your book that you have on your end. Introduction to Cognitive Psychology for the topic one. Okay. Last meeting, we got video clips regarding on this movie. Okay, as time goes by, since that we are focused on the scenario, we are unable to notice this man, that the man changes his appearance and also the dress. Okay, and not all of us noticed that one. And for that movie perception test, we have here change blindness. It's our inability to see the changes in certain scenario. Okay, it is our occasional inability to recognize changes as well. Okay, an example for this clip will be this. Okay, on that experiment, the people who've seen this video were asked to how many ball passes to these people wearing white. Okay, they instructed you that one. However, at the end of the experiment, we're unable to notice the gorilla passed by. Okay, and that's what we call inattentional blindness. Okay, we are only focused to a certain things as well. But for this one, that's what we call inattentional blindness because there will be no changes. However, since that there is no changes on the clip, there will be a certain things that we were asked to focus on, which is the passing the ball. That's why it's called inattentional blindness. Hindi natin siya napansin. Next would be, example, you're inside of the party or you're at the party rather, and then there's a lot of background noise, chit-chats, and music, loud music also. However, how is it how can we notice or how can we still understand what our friends or someone that we're talking to, that information that they are giving to us, right? So that's what we call, even though that there is a lot of noises at the background, so that's what we call a cocktail party effect, or it's our ability to focus on one out of many voices is one of the most striking phenomena in cognitive psychology. Okay, and that's what we call cocktail party effect. Nagagawa natin mag-focus sa isang certain things even though that there's a lot of background noise if we are really intended to focus on. Okay, so I have here a question. Do we really multitask? Okay? So, in line dun sa mga video clips na napanood and other experiments na pinanood sa inyo, and then what we have on this PowerPoint. The question is that, do we really multitask? Okay? So, nagaga ba natin to lahat sabay-sabay? So, I want you to think that one for 5 seconds. Alright. In cognitive psychology, we don't have the word multitasking. Why is that? Because our brain shifts from one task to another. Example, there is an experiment that has been conducted, like Um, example, you are inside of the, you are driving a car. Okay, while you are driving a car, the experimenter asked this driver to memorize certain words. Okay, while the driver is memorizing certain words, um, the experimenter asked to list down all the information apart from that memorization and while driving a car. Okay, so the experiment conducted that we people or human beings don't really multitask because on that experiment it was found that the driver wasn't able to memorize everything. And also, apart from that, the driver are not able to is not able rather wasn't able to list down all the tasks perfectly, all the words perfectly, and he had also a trouble in driving a car. Okay, so there's no such word as multitask. But ano nangyayari sa brain? Ang nangyayari sa brain is that our brain shift from one to another. Okay, so hindi totoo yung word na multitasking. Okay, especially in cognitive psychology. Next, we how does the brain responsible for that? Okay, there is an experiment also regarding on Phineas Gage. Si Phineas Gage ay isang okay ang behavior niya, timid, what do you mean by okay? Timid, mayayain, okay sa work, something like that, and so on and so forth. Sabihin natin isang mabuting empleyado si Phineas Gage, may mabuting attitude. Okay? However, there was an accident happened to him, like, natusok siya ng rod. Okay? Pumasok yung rod dun sa ulo ni Phineas Gage and then, ganito ang nangyari sa skull ni Phineas Gage. However, Phineas Gage luckily survived on that accident. As time goes by, the attitudes of this Phineas Gage changes. Okay? And eventually he died. What are the changes happened to Phineas Gage? Naging aggressive si Phineas Gage with with the whole life. And hindi na siya ganun galing mag-function sa isang certain things. And that's what the story of Phineas Gage. And because of that, many people got, or many psychologists get interested in studying the part of the brain. Kasi how come na hindi namatay yung isang tao at nagbago ang traits nitong tao na to after niya accident. Okay? Napagalaman na each part of the brain, as I mentioned dun sa unang slide, na each part of the brain is responsible doon sa emotion, sensation, and so on and so forth. Okay? And that's the beginning of everything. It's a mas malawak pang experiment that in cognitive psychology. So, what is cognitive psychology? Okay? So, cognitive psychology is the study of how people perceive, learn, remember, and think about information. So, to sum up, it's all about of the brain functioning. Okay? How are we going to put short-term memory to a long-term memory? How are we going to retain the information in our brain? Okay, or in our mind. Next would be cognitive psychology might study how people perceive various shape also. Some of you are got interested that there are some people that for you it's weird yung amoy or the sensation of other people. Bakit iba-iba tayo ng amoy? Okay? Bakit iba-iba tayo ng gustong panglasa? Sa iyo masarap, sa akin hindi. Sa iba would be mabango, sa iba naman ay mabaho. It's because of each part of the brain is our brain of a human being is not the same with everybody. Okay? Kaya yung iba't iba sila ng taste and ng sensation. And it plays a role of epigenetic. When you see epigenetic, it has something to do with the environment and biological processes. Kung saan nanggaling yung isang tao. Okay? And let me go back. A cognitive psychology might study how people perceive various shapes, why they remember some facts but forget others, and how they learn language. Okay? And in line to that, cognitive psychology is an interesting subject because of we can identify the differences of each people or everyone. And that's the goal of this course. Will be able to understand why does this person or bakit sa kanya mabaho, bakit mabango, paano nagre-retain yung information into long-term memory, at paano natin nagagawang mag-focus into a certain task. So, why do we need to study the history? We have to study the history. Saan nga ba nagsimula ang cognitive psychology? Okay? And mamaya matatakal natin yung ganong bagay. But before we proceed on that one, let's move to dialectic. When we say dialectic, it's a developmental process where ideas evolve over time through a pattern of transformation. Meaning to say, in regards to dialectic processes by Hegel, example would be, kung okay sa'yo ang antibiotic na to, as time goes by, okay pa rin ba siya? So, there's no such word as scientifically proven. When we say scientifically proven, no, science don't prove things. Science contradict certain things or the evidences by providing facts. Okay? And how does dialectic process goes? We have here thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. What do you mean by thesis? Alright, so thesis is when you or a character is in a zone of comfort. Okay, here's the thing. Thesis came from synthesis. Okay, so thesis came from the synthesis. For example, would be, itong biogesic na to ay applicable to para, or biogesic or paracetamol rather, para makapagpagaling or to cure or to lessen the fever of an individual who are suffering from fever or colds, okay, or influenza. However, the antithesis for that one will be for finding something else, okay, by searching the other alternatives way for that. Example, hindi na gumana si biogesic or si paracetamol sa isang individual who has a fever. So, how can we come up with the antithesis? It's either na isusupport natin yung thesis or the initial perception or the initial information that we have, which is the thesis, isusupport natin siya ng antithesis or ikokontra natin siya ng antithesis by providing facts or supporting facts. And the result of that one would be now the synthesis or the conclusion. What has been changed? Does the paracetamol still work to an individual who has a fever? Okay? And in regards to dialectic process, the process goes again. Okay, pwede mo sabihin na, okay, hindi na nag-work si synthesis. The paracetamol or the ingredients that the paracetamol has ay hindi na applicable dun sa mga next generation. Okay? So that is the conclusion or the changes that that was happened. Ngayon, ang mangyayari doon, yung synthesis na to ay magiging process. Okay? Yung initial natin na synthesis ay magiging thesis and magkakaroon ulit tayo ng antithesis, which is, are we going to support the initial or the last fact that has been conducted, or are we going to contradict, ay, pwede pa pala siya gumana sa next generation. Something like that. So, science don't prove facts. No, sorry. Science provide facts. Okay? And by this fact, nagkakaroon tayo ng antithesis. Okay? So, there's no such word as scientifically proven because of science proved facts. Okay? Everything changes depending on the bodily information or the facts or investigation or experiment that's been conducted. Okay, so take note, science is evolving. Okay? And science don't give scientifically proven. Kasi kung may word na scientifically proven, ibig sabihin nun, hindi na kailangan pag-aralan. Okay? So, lahat nag-evolve by the use of this thesis, antithesis, and synthesis of Hegel. That's according to Hegel, the dialectic process. Next will be, where and when did the cognitive psychology begin? Alright, so let's go back to philosophers. Okay, philosophical antecedent of psychology, rationalism versus empirism. Okay, so Plato as a rationalist. A rationalist believes that the route to knowledge is through thinking and logical analysis. When we say through thinking or logical analysis by rationalist, that will be an internal. Okay, so innate behavior. Okay, it's more about analyzing things. Okay, so okay, and next would be Socrates as empiricist. When we say empiricist, it's more on experience. Okay, so what happened to Socrates to and Plato? Socrates is a student of Plato. All right, so he contradict the philosophical data of Plato. After 12 years, when Plato died, Socrates go back to the place kung nasaan si Plato. Alright? And sinasabi niya na, Plato, mali ka. The philosophical view of yours is not true. We learn through experience, not just by being rationalist or the innate behavior or logical thinking that you are saying. Alright? And one of the philosophers also will be Rene Descartes. It's a mathematician. Okay? He maintained that the only proof of existence is that he was thinking and doubting. Okay, so cogito ergo sum comes from the Greek word which means I think therefore I am. So parang nag-isip ako kaya ako nalaman. Alright? And also, John Locke said po, John Locke was labeled for empirical observation or the tabula rasa. When you see tabula rasa, it's like a magic slate na pinaglalaroan mo nung bata ka. Okay, ako lang ata yan because I'm too old enough for that one. Like, it's a blank slate na tabula rasa means blank slate. Okay, it's isa siyang malinis sa papel. And as you grow older, nagkakaroon ng laman based on the experiences. Okay, that's what tabula rasa. Sabi ni John Locke, we learn because we are like blank slate. Na as we go older, nagkakaroon tayo ng laman based on the experiences na mangyayari sa atin. Okay? And now, schools. We have a structuralism. Structuralism, it's more about of the structure. Okay? Literal na word structure of the mind and its perception by analyzing those perceptions into their constituent components. And what are these components? These are the affection, attention, memory, sensation, and etc. Okay, in line to structuralism, there is an introspection. It is an experimental method was an important change in the field because the main emphasis in the study of the mind shifted from rationalist approach to the empiricist approach of trying to observe behavior in order to draw conclusion about the subject of the study. When we say introspection, it's more about the researcher are interested in problem solving puzzle. Okay, so that is introspection. So we are trying to, with this introspection, we are trying to have problem solving skills. Okay? Paano nangyayari itong mga bagay na to? Paano natin masusolusyon na isang bagay na to? By using introspection. For other explanation or clarification, you may ask me during synchronous class. Next would be functionalism. Functionalism seeks to understand what people do and why they do it. So, anong ginagawa ng mga tao and bakit nila ito ginagawa? And for this functionalism, it's a physical sorry, this is a principal question about processes, was in contrast to that of the structuralist, who had asked what the elementary contents or the structure of the mind. So, kinoconfirm ni functionalism, yung sinasabi ng structuralism na it's a physical experience. Kung lalagyan natin sa cognitive psychology would be the physical appearance of the brain, the geometric property, and color of the brain. All of these things are for structuralism. But in functionalism, it's not only about the structure, it's about of the function of a brain kung ilalagay natin siya sa cognitive psychology. It seeks to understand why do people do certain things. Okay? We also have here pragmatists. Okay? These pragmatic people believe that knowledge is validated by its usefulness. What can you do it with it? Okay? Pragmatists are concerned not only with knowing what people do, they also want to know what we can do with our knowledge of what people do. Okay? So, sinasabi ng mga pragmatists na ano, hindi lang ito sa kung ano ang alam ng isang tao, pero sinasabi din ito na ano pa ba ang magagawa ng isang tao. Okay? That is what pragmatists believe. Next would be behaviorism. And some of you knows this one already. Behaviorism focuses only on the relation between observable behavior and environmental events or stimuli. Okay? So, the idea was to make physical whatever other might have called mental. Okay, so behavior has something to do with the observable behavior and how this observable behavior affect by the environmental events. Okay, paano nag-change yung isang human behavior ng isang human being or ng isang living things because not living things but a human rather, okay, by the event kung ano yung nakapalibot sa kanila. And these behaviors are interested mostly sa the effect the effect of surroundings dun sa behavior ng isang tao. And one of what we've known experiment is the Pavlovian conditioning. By the way, lahat ng mga tinakal sa mga previous lessons and other core subject nyo will be a summarization of this introduction of cognitive psychology. Because we have to go back sa mga previous lesson that your instructor have taught you because of kailangan natin maintindihan and use that one as a great foundation for each lesson that we are going to talk about in cognitive psychology. Okay, and one of the famous behaviors is the Pavlov. Okay, what happened to this Pavlov? Pavlov is known for Pavlovian conditioning. As I mentioned earlier, before, there will be no drools or salivation doon sa dog every time na nakikita niya yung isang bagay. Okay, before conditioning, food serves as the unconditioned stimulus. Okay, when we say unconditioned stimulus, ay hindi naman nagkakaroon ng salivation doon sa bagay na ipinapartner. So, kay Pavlovian conditioning, may association of something. Okay? And the unconditioned response will be salivation. So, kung walang unconditioned stimulus, there will be no unconditioned response. Kasi walang kailangan na reason para mag-salivate yung dog. Okay? So, what happened? Before conditioning, the dog has no response in line to the bell. Okay? However, during conditioning, ipinapart ng Pavlov itong bell which is kasama niya lagi ay ang food. Okay? So, in regards to that, dahil sa na-condition yung aso na every time na mag-ring ang bell, there will be an association ng food, nagkaroon na ng unconditioned response, which is the salivation. Alright? And after conditioning, kahit na wala na ang bell, kahit wala na ang food na association ng bell, kahit na magkaroon na ng bell ringing, ay naglalaway pa rin yung aso. Or nagkakaroon pa ng salivation yung aso dun sa bell. Kasi nga, na-condition yung aso na every time na may bell, ay may kasamang food. So, the bell now, na kung before conditioning, ay walang response ang nangyari yung dog, nagkaroon na ng response yung dog doon sa bell. And that bell served na as conditioned stimulus. Okay? Na-condition na yung bell doon sa para doon sa aso. Okay? Nagkakaroon ng salivation or ng conditioned response, which is the salivation na doon sa bell kahit wala ng food. Next would be John B. Watson. He is known for rather radical behaviorism. For John B. Watson, may tatawag siya na experiment in line to Brat and Little Albert. Before, there is no trauma. Sabihin natin trauma kasi medyo harsh ang ginawa dito ni Watson. Okay? Doon si Little Albert doon sa daga. Okay? However, as time goes by, pag nagpapakita si John B. Watson doon sa bata ng daga, sinasabayan niya ito ng loud na hammer. Okay? Yung pukpok niya. And na-condition ngayon itong si Little Albert na matakot doon sa daga. And after conditioning, kahit na wala na ang loud na hammer or the loud noise produced by hammer, ay natatakot na siya sa daga. Okay, so that's what happened to Little Albert. In line to this, we have here gradual desensitization and the flooding. How is that process goes? When we say gradual, just to add up on this slide, when we say gradual, ay dahan-dahan mong ipinapakita doon sa tao yung changes of something. Okay? When we say flooding, biglaan mong ipinapakita yung changes doon sa tao para mag-iba ang behavior. Example for that one would be hindi ka dati natatakot doon sa certain subjects na cognitive psychology. However, lagi kang pinapahiya ng teacher mo during class. Okay? So, sabihin natin may level yung pagpapahiya, and that's what we call the gradual desensitization. Okay? Ngayon, every time na narinig mo na si cognitive psychology, somehow funny, natatakot ka na. Kasi, there is an association na ngayon ng gradual desensitization because of the experience that you experience doon sa instructor mo. When you say flooding, biglaan ka na lang mapapaya na matatrauma ka, doon ka ngayon matatakot doon sa cognitive psychology. So, there are two. The gradual desensitization and the flooding. Next would be causes of extinction and when it occurs. Imagine that a researcher has trained a lab rat to press a key to receive a food pellet. What happens when the researcher stops delivering the food? While extinction will not occur immediately, it will after time. If the rat continues to press the key but does not get the pellet, the behavior will eventually dwindle until it disappears entirely. Okay? So, in line to extinction, ang sinasabi dito would be, example, there is an experiment na every time i-press ng rat yung lever na kung saan nagpo-produce ng pellet at kung saan kakain siya, okay, ay may lumalabas na pellet dun sa lever every time i-press ng daga. However, dumating sa time na kahit nagpo-press yung daga ng lever, wala na lumalabas na food. There are no foods coming out on that lever. Okay? So, that's what we call extinction. Yung nakasanayan nating behavior will be mawawala na siya ngayon. Example of extinction is this. Um, you are habituated by your boyfriends. Lagyan natin dito kasi medyo mas catchy. You are habituated by your boyfriend na every time mag-online siya, doon sa messenger nakikita mo, ay chinachat ka. Sabi ng good night, good morning, kumain ka na ba? And there will be an attachment for that. However, bigla na lang nawala yung nakasanayan mong behavior doon sa jowa mo or the person that you are attached with. Nawala ng kilig, nawala ng excitement every time mag-chat siya. And after nun, ay nagparamdam ulit siya. Sabihin natin after a month, after 2 weeks, and ganun na naman, nag-chat na naman siya. Will it be the same experience na na-experience mo before? That experience now, the kilig, the attachment, and so on, na naramdaman mo towards dun sa boyfriend mo or someone special to you, will become now extinct. And that's what we call extinction. Yung nakakasanayan natin gawi, pag-ugali, or pinapakita sa atin ng tao, ay bigla na lang nawawala. At kung bumalik, ay bigla nawala, at kung bumalik man siya, that's the same emotion or attachment that nararamdaman natin sa kanila, bigla na lang nawala ng tuluyan. But the big question for this would be, babalik pa ba kung gano'n na yung feelings or naramdaman mo doon sa kachat mo? Well, we'll talk about that one later. Next would be another thing for taste, what we call is taste aversion. Okay, conditioned taste aversion can also be affected by extinction. All right, so imagine that you ate some ice cream and this ice cream is your favorite one. Okay, however, before ka magkaroon ng sakit, favorite mo yung ice cream na yun. Kaso, after magkaroon ng sakit, nag-iba yung panglasa mo and gusto mo nang sinusuko na yung ice cream kahit na dati, favorite mo siya. As a result, you develop a taste aversion, okay, to ice cream and avoided eating it, even though it was formerly one of your favorite foods. Okay, so one way to overcome this reluctance would be to expose yourself to ice cream. Okay, and even if it's just the thought of eating it made you feel a little squeezy, you might start by taking just a few small tastes over and over again. And as you continue to eat the food without getting sick, your condition aversion would be eventually diminished. Same goes with the nag-ghost ka ng ex-boyfriend mo or something like that. If I don't know if that is the correct term for that, nabigla na lang hindi nagparamdam. However, after a month, a year, something like that, ay nagparamdam na ulit. Paano babalik yung feelings ngayon towards doon sa kachat mo, boyfriend mo, or someone that is giving you an attachment? Pwede bumalik yun by just like what taste version to the ice cream. Okay, by gradual process. And as time goes by, will be yung kilig and excitement pwedeng bumalik. Alright? So, extinction doesn't mean it's gone forever. The answer for that one is, if the conditioned response is no longer displayed, does that really mean that it's gone forever? In this research, Pavlov found that when extinction occurs, it doesn't mean that the subject returns to their unconditioned state. Okay? Allowing several hours or even days to elapse after a response has been extinguished can result in the spontaneous recovery of the response. Spontaneous recovery refers to the sudden reappearance of previously extinct response. So, meaning, pwede pang bumalik yung feelings doon sa manligaw mo or doon sa taste of an ice cream na nangyari sa'yo. Kasi nga nagkalagnat ka, hindi mo nagustuhan yung taste by taste of aversion and through spontaneous recovery. Okay, so hindi porket na ganun yung nangyari would be no, wala nang feelings, hindi na nababalik, something like that. Okay? And in his research also on operant conditioning, Skinner discovered that how and when a behavior is reinforced could influence how resistant it was extinction. He found that the partial scheduling of reinforcement or reinforcing of behavior only part of the time helped reduce the chances of extinction. Okay, so now in line to Skinner, there is an operant conditioning, and this operant conditioning para bumalik and ma-reduce yung extinction doon mo sa certain task. Lalo na ngayon na may animal training tayo, scheduling of reinforcement is very much important kasi this will be the time na i-reinforce mo ang isang animal, could be an animal, okay, but it can also be happen to human also, okay. Halimbawa, paano mo i-reinforce ang isang rat na pumunta sa right direction ng base na project nyo ngayon. Okay? Mapapag-aralan natin yan. Okay, factors that may influence extinction. Okay? So, behaviors that are very well established may become almost impervious to extinction and may continue to display even after the reinforcement has been removed altogether. Some research has suggested that habituation may play a role in extinction as well. Because ibig sabihin, nawawala ang isang bagay because of na-habituate ka na doon. It plays a role yung pagkakaroon ng habituation. Halimbawa, kung dati gustong-gusto mo yung isang tao na yon, in layman's term, nagsawa ka na sa ginagawa niya. And that thing, that extinction plays a role also. Hindi porket na paulit-ulit or sabihin natin in relationship, kung paulit-ulit na lang ng ginagawa sa'yo or paulit-ulit na lang na doon kayo nagde-date sa isang lugar or yung ginagawa ng boyfriend mo sa'yo, okay, and you are habituated already to that something else, doesn't mean that it will stay na ganun lang forever. So, sabihin natin nagsasawa, okay, dun sa naging process, okay? Because you have become habituated to the conditioned stimulus, you are more likely to ignore it na. Okay? Eh, medyo, alam mo na kung ano yung nangyayari, there is no challenges, sabi nga ng iba, and dun, na-habituate ka na dun sa conditioned stimulus na pinapakita sa'yo na maniligan mo ng boyfriend whatsoever, ay more likely na i-ignore na natin yung bagay na yon. Eventually, mag-lead yung ganong habituated process or habituated attachment or feelings into extinction. Okay? Next would be, personality factors might also play in the role of extinction. Halimbawa, ikaw yung tao na madali ka magsawa dun sa pinapakita ng isang tao. Okay? So, the personality traits or factors of an individual plays a role on that extinction as well. Not just by only habituation. Kaya uusapan din dito yung gaano katagal ka magsawa. Anong factors or anong personality traits that you are possessed with bago ka magsawa, and so on and so forth. This is the example of B.F. Skinner of operant conditioning. Every time na ipapress ng rat ang lever, may lalabas na pellet. Okay? So, anong ginawa ni B.F. Skinner type of scheduling dito? And that is the big question. Okay? Would it be interval ratio and fixed ratio, variable ratio, and so on and so forth, which is we're going to tackle also later. So, there are 4 ways to shape behavior. Paano ba natin sineshape yung behavior? Okay? Okay, so there are 4. We have here administering. When we say administering, we are giving something. Okay? We have good thing, what we call positive reinforcement. This is a kind of way that you are giving a reward. Okay? Example, a reward, money, candy, and so on and so forth. Basta may binibigay ka doon sa subject mo. When we say bad thing or positive punishment, you are giving something to punish that people or to that subject to stop the behavior. Okay? When we say positive reinforcement, you are giving something para lumabas yung desired behavior mo or you are giving a positive punishment para lumabas yung behavior mo through using a bad thing. When we say negative punishment, it's more about taking away and negative reinforcement. When we say negative punishment, halimbawa, gusto yung kukunin ka sa kanya, taking a toy away, or example would be may papagawa ka something and then may kailangang matapos niya sa ganung time frame or time relapse, dapat matapos niya yung isang bagay na yun. Kung hindi, there will be a negative punishment na mangyayari. Binibigay ito or nagbibigay tayo ng negative punishment para mapalabas natin yung negative behavior. Or hindi pala binibigay, kinukuha natin yung something para lumabas yung desired behavior na gusto natin. When we say negative reinforcement, okay, so negative reinforcement, we are taking away something then to para lumabas yung desired behavior. If there is confusion regarding on this, you may ask me through synchronous class, since that we only have a limited hour for this recording, and I do apologize for that. Next would be the summarization of operant conditioning will be we are giving punish. Okay, there will be two things with this punishment. We are adding something para lumabas yung behavior or desired behavior na gusto natin, or we are giving punishment, negative punishment para lumabas yung behavior natin. Okay, so and next would be reinforcement. Kinukuha natin yung something para mas ma-reinforce yung tao na gumawa ng certain things, and also, or nagbibigay tayo ng something, positive reinforcement, para lumabas yung gusto nating behavior. Kung sa positive punishment, may inaalis tayo para ma-lessen that behavior na gusto natin, halimbawa, gusto mo na yung anak mo ay kumain ng gulay. Okay? You are taking away to that baby para kumain siya ng gulay. Okay? So, that is something that is not happening now and the subject does not want to experience. Halimbawa, ang gagawin mo sa kanya ay pag hindi kumain ng gulay, ang positive punishment would be pwedeng paluin mo, something like that, which is ethical, okay? Or pagilitan mo siya. Also, sa negative punishment naman, you are subtracting to na meron dun sa bata para kumain siya ng gulay. Okay? Yung desired behavior mo ay mapalabas. Okay? So, for reinforcement, you are getting away something para lumabas yung desired behavior na gusto mo, or you're adding something para lumabas yung desired behavior mo. Okay? Let's repeat everything. In positive punishment, you are taking away, or you are giving something dun sa tao na ayaw niya, or dun sa baby na ayaw niya, para malesen yung behavior na gusto mo mangyari sa kanya. Okay? Para ma-weaken yung behavior mo. Halimbawa, yung behavior na gusto mo maalis sa kanya ay yung pagiging picky niya dun sa food. Okay? So, you are giving something like paluin mo, pagalitan mo, sawayin mo, para hindi siya maging picky dun sa food. In negative naman, punishment, you are getting something to that baby. Halimbawa, pag hindi mo ito inubos itong gulay, ang gagawin ko ay hindi ka manonood ng TV. Something like that. And that is in line to negative punishment. Kapag reinforcement, gusto mo mapalabas yung behavior niya by adding or subtracting by using of reinforcement. It's either may tatanggalin ka sa kanya, okay, para lumabas yung desired behavior, or may idadagdag ka para lumabas yung desired behavior. Example, alimbawa ulit yun sa pagkain. Kanina, ay gusto mo ma-weaken yung pagiging picky ng isang baby. Ngayon naman, sa reinforcement, sa negative reinforcement, yung behavior niya na gusto mo siyang kumain lagi ng gulay. Okay? Sa negative reinforcement doon ay may something the subject is experiencing or expect to be experienced, and now para lumabas yung something na yun, you are taking away something to the baby. Okay? Sa positive reinforcement naman, nagbibigay ka ng something para ma-strengthen yung gusto mong behavior, yung desired behavior. Both negative and positive reinforcement are administering to a person or to an animal or to anything else para lumabas yung desired behavior. In positive punishment, tsaka in negative punishment, you are taking away something para ma-weaken yung behavior na gusto mong ma-weaken. Alright? And I hope that it's clear. And if you still have questions, you may ask me during asynchronous or synchronous class. Now, there are two types of reinforcement schedule. The first one is continuous reinforcement, or always giving out rewards for good behavior at certain intervals, and intermittent or partial reinforcement, only sometimes giving out a reward for good behavior considered to be more efficient. Okay? So, in line to that one, sinasabi na mas mabuti daw gamitin ang partial reinforcement because it only nagbibigay ka lang ng reward doon sa tao or maybe an animal also can be applicable kung may gusto ka lang lumabas sa kanya na kung may ginagawa lang siya na behavior or desired behavior na gusto mo, doon ka lang nagbibigay sa kanya ng reward. O, okay? Doon ka lang nagbibigay sa kanya ng reinforcement. Alright? Next would be, we have here fixed ratio, variable ratio, fixed interval, and variable interval. Always take note that ratio meaning is amount. Interval always associated with time. Okay? Let me repeat. Ang ratio has something to do with the amount and interval associated with time. Associated with time. Okay, we have here fixed ratio. Fixed ratio reinforcement depends on a definite number of responses. Okay, what would be the outcome? Activity shows after reinforcement and then picks up. Okay, example would be sa fixed ratio will be example, there is a salesman. Okay, every time na makakabenta siya ng ika-fifth, halimbawa, nakabenta siya ng 5 kotse, okay, doon siya makaka-receive ng reward or ng reinforcement. That is fixed ratio, which will be the amount. Okay? Ulitin natin na ang ratio talks about the amount. Okay, so with this, reinforcement occurs after a fixed number of responses. Pwedeng every time na every 5. Okay, so tuwing makakabenta siya ng 5 kotse, magbibigay ka, pwedeng every 10, or ikaw yung magsiset kung kailan ka magbibigay ng reinforcement. That is in a salesman scenario. But in animal, since that animal training ang gagawin, will be, halimbawa, ang isang rat, bago siya makakain, okay, kailangan niya muna pumunta doon sa certain direction, na desired direction na gusto mong ilagay sa kanya bago mo siya bibigyan ng reinforcement or reward. Ikaw yung magsiset kung every 5 napunta niya doon sa correct direction ng maze, dun ka magbibigay ng reward. Okay? Next will be variable ratio. So variable ratio, number of responses needed for reinforcement varies. And for the outcome, greatest activity of all schedules, mas mataas daw ang chances for this variable ratio. Okay? So a variable ratio schedule means that the reinforcer is delivered after an average number of correct responses has been occurred. Okay? And it is similar to fixed ratio. Okay, the variable ratio. Except the number of responses needed to receive the reinforcement changes after each reinforcer is presented. Okay? So, pwede ka maglagay, kunyari, ng ganito. Kanina, si fixed ratio, every 5 ka maglalagay ng, makakuha siya ng reinforcement or ng reward. Kay variable ratio, pwede mo ka magdagdag ng variable. Example would be, okay, for this first stage, okay, kapag sa salesman, balik tayo sa salesman. Halimbawa, nakabenta siya ng 5 kotse, makaka-receive siya ng isang reward or ng reinforcement. Tapos, sa magbibenta ulit siya, hindi na siya 5, 6 na. Okay? Tapos, then bago siya makareceive ng reward or ng reinforcement. Tapos, magbibenta siya 7 naman. Okay? And 8, 9, 10. Every that. So, the variable changes. Okay? So, in line to an animal, pwede ka maglagay, kunyari, ng every time na magpe-peck or na ipapress ng daga yung lever, okay, maglalagay ka na, okay, sa unang press niya, sa ikalimang press niya, doon siya makakatanggap ng reward. Okay? Tapos, mauulit yon. Ika-6 na 6 naman, doon siya makakatanggap ng reward. Sa ika-7, doon siya makaka-receive naman ng reward. Okay? Kailangan niya maka-6 para maka-receive siya ng second reward. Pwedeng, tapos, after niya maka-receive ng reward dun sa ng second reward, sa ika-6 times niya pag-press ng lever, sa ika-7 naman, dun siya makakuha ng ika-third na reward. And I hope that is clear. If you have question, you may still verify that one to me during synchronous. So, the difference in fixed ratio would be fixing ibinibigay mong amount. Kay variable ratio, hindi siya fixed na amount. Pwedeng madagdagan, ikaw yung magsiset nun. Basta, pwedeng pataas or pwedeng baba-taas yung pagbibigay mo ng variable ratio. But, kung ibababa at tataas mo ang pagbibigay ng reinforcement, pwedeng bumaba din yung behavior or hindi maging successful in desired behavior kung gagamit ka na ng variable ratio na hindi consistent or pataas pababa ang pagbigay mo ng reward. Next would be fixed interval. Okay? Sa fixed interval, sinasabi dito na reinforcement depends on the fixed time. Okay? So, it depends on the amount of time passes. Okay? Mas slower ang reinforcement ni fixed interval. Okay? Ibig sabihin, mas slower ang reinforcement. Halimbawa, every 8 hours, sa tuwing 8 hours, nagbibigay ka ng reward. Halimbawa, umaga, tanghali, gabi. Yung pagbibigay mo ng reward. Regardless, kung magawa ng tao na yun, yung gusto mong desired behavior na gusto niyang gawin, or ng animal na yun, ang desired behavior na gusto mong magawa niya, magbibigay ka ng reward every 8 hours. So, fix yung nagbibigay ka. Umaga, tanghali, gabi ka nagbibigay ng reward. Regardless kung magawa niya yun, regardless kung hindi niya magawa, basta yung pagbibigay mo ng reward sa kanya ay umaga, tanghali, gabi. Kay variable interval naman would be time between reinforcement varies. Okay? Okay? For outcome, study activity results. Okay? Ano ba meaning ng variable interval? Time between reinforcement varies. Halimbawa, balik tayo sa salesman. Magbibigay ka na sa kanya every time kung kailan mo lang gusto ng magbigay sa kanya ng reinforcement. So, kay variable interval, um, regardless kung makabenta siya or hindi siya makabenta, basta makita mo, basta consistent yung ginagawa niya na process, nagbebenta siya or nakikipag-usap siya ng customer, at natsyempohan mo na nakikita mo siya na may kausap na customer at nagbebenta, doon ka magbibigay ng reinforcement. Okay? Example, regardless kung kailan makaka-receive yung isang animal ng reward, basta patuloy niyang ginagawa yung trabaho niya, not the trabaho, but the desired behavior na gusto mo magawa dun, or ipagawa dun sa animal na yun. Example would be a rat. Gusto mo na yung rat na to ay patuloy lang siya makapunta doon sa desired direction na ginawa mo doon sa maze. Para patuloy siya makapunta doon sa direction na ginawa mo sa maze, kailan ka magbibigay ng reward? Magbibigay ka ng reward every time lang na nakikita mo na ginagawa niya yun. Okay? There will be no specific time. Pwedeng ginagawa niya ng whole day pero kinabukasan ka pa magbigay ng reward. Basta every time na makikita mo siya na ginagawa yung behavior na yun. So, dapat consistent yung behavior na yun kasi walang fixed time kung kailan magbibigay ka ng reward doon sa subject mo. Next would be this, key themes in cognitive psychology. We have here nature versus nurture. And thesis slash antithesis. So, nasabi natin kanina, the dialectic processes. So, if we believe that the environment plays an important role in cognition, we might conduct research exploring how distinctive characteristics of individuals seem to influence cognition. So, this thing, na nature versus nurture, ay it has something to do with naniniwala ka ba dun sa environment na yon? That will be the thesis? Or kailangan mo pang mag-provide ng certain facts or mag-conduct ng study or i-contra yung bagay na yun? Are we motivated by nature or nurture? Okay? And some says na we are motivated by nature kung saan tayo lumaking environment. However, if you would like to contradict or to support that one, you have to provide a data or fact or an experiment or a study to support that thesis of yours. So, synthesis. We can explore how cooperation and interaction in the environment. Example, an impoverished environment adversely affects someone whose genes otherwise might have led to success the variety of tasks. Okay? So, ang thesis mo, there will be a conclusion for that. Ang conclusion mo ay pwedeng ang genes sa nature versus nurture ay nagmamatter or nagvavary doon sa if you are motivated by nature or nurture things. Okay? Kung naniniwala tayo na kaya naging ganito ang behavior ng isang tao is because of dito siya lumaki. Or nakalakihan niya yung mga maingay, kaya maingay din siya. Kailangan natin mag-conduct ng isa pang research. Okay? Para natin isa pa or virus research para matugunan or makita natin talaga kung nag-influence ba ang nature or nurture dun sa behavior and or the cognition ng isang individual. So, the synthesis is that personality effect. Okay? So, since as I discussed, synthesis has something to do with the conclusion. Okay? So, either na kukontra mo si thesis or you will support that one. Okay? Next will be rationalism versus empiricism. Thesis slash antithesis. How should we discover the truth about ourselves? Okay? And about the world around us? Should we do so by trying to reason logically based on what we already know? Or should we do so by observing and testing our observation of what we can perceive through our senses? Okay, so that is your thesis slash antithesis mo. So, there will be two contradicting scenario dun sa nakalagay sa sentence. na sa paragraph na yan. Okay, so for the synthesis, in line to rationalism versus empiricism, we can combine theory with empirical methods to learn the most we can about cognitive phenomena. Okay? Mhm. Next with me, structure versus processes. Okay, the thesis slash antithesis of you would be should we study structure, the contents, the attributes, and products of a human mind, or should we focus on the processes of human thinking? So, saan ba tayo kailangan mag-focus sa structures? Kailangan ba natin mag-focus sa in line to cognitive psychology sa structure ng brain na kung mas maliit ba ang brain niya, would be ganito ba siya mag-isip the cognition of this of an individual, or should we focus na kung paano siya mag-isip, not just by the seeing the structure or the sizes of that brain of an individual. So the synthesis or the conclusion for that is we can explore how mental processes operate on mental structures. Next would be number 4, domain generality versus domain specificity. Thesis and antithesis would be, are the processes we observe limited to single domains lang ba? Or are they general across a variety of domains? Do observation in one domain apply also to all domains? Or do they apply only to the specific domain that we have observed? Okay? Synthesis, we can explore which processes might be domain general and which might be domain specific. Validity of causal inferences versus ecological validity. So all of these key themes in cognitive psychology are the questions that we have to focus on for the thesis and antithesis, and we have to have a synthesis in all questions. The thesis and antithesis for this is, should we study cognition by using highly controlled experiment that increases the probability of valid inferences regarding causality, or should we use more naturalistic techniques which increases the likelihood of obtaining ecologically valid findings but possibly at the expense of experimental control? All right, and for our synthesis, we can combine variety of methods, including laboratory methods and more naturalistic ones, so as to converge on findings that hold up regardless of the method of study. 6 would be applied versus basic research. Should we conduct research into fundamental cognitive processes? Or should we study ways in which to help people use cognition effectively in practical situations? So the conclusion would be we can combine the two kind of research dialectically. So the basic research leads to applied research, which leads to further basic research, and so on. 7. Biological versus behavioral methods. Should we study the brain and its function directly? Kailangan ba natin pag-aralan ang brain kung paano ito gumagalaw or paano ito nag-function, or perhaps even scanning the brain while people are performing cognitive tasks, just like dun sa research na sa driving a car, kasi may nilagay doon na device na kung saan nakikita na nagsishift nga yung brain habang nagda-drive siya, and then may memorization na nangyari. Or should we study people's behavior in cognitive tasks and looking at measures such as percent correct and reaction time? Synthesis would be, we can try to synthesize biological and behavioral methods so that we can understand cognitive phenomena at multiple levels of analysis. And that's all the key themes in cognitive psychology and introduction for cognitive psychology, and also end of lesson 1. I hope you learned something in regards to this lesson. If you still have clarification or question that you think that is not clear for this lesson, you may ask me during synchronous or asynchronous class, and I hope you learned something in regards to this recording. Thank you for listening.